Somebody sent me something today where some white people, members of the mayonnaise mafia, were talking about how black people play the race card too much. First of all, black life ain't no damn game. So when you say race card, you're trivializing our experience. The whole purpose of the concept of the race card is to make black people feel irresponsible for calling you out on being who you are. I tell you what, we about 15% of the population. Give me 15% of the resources. Give me 15% of the land. Give me 15% of the banks. Give me 15% of the farms. Give me 15% of the police. Give me 15% of the political power. Give me 15% of the U.S. Senate. Give me 15% of everything. And then we can negotiate whether or not the race card is a real thing. Because what we know about white folk, in order to protect your privilege, you have to constantly keep your victims defending their accusations about truths that we all know to be true. And black people, y'all have to stop falling into these traps. I said, give us 15% of everything. Give us our percentage of all power developing assets and institutions. And then we can talk about putting the race card out of commission. But the point that I was making is the white power structure keeps black people imbalanced because they always creating a narrative that forces you to explain accusations that they know are true, which is why I don't get involved in that. See, I don't do, y'all do that because y'all want white people to feel compassion for you. You want white folks to understand you. You want them to identify with you. You want them to feel your pain. I harbor no such imaginations. The only thing I want to talk about is what are you willing to change versus what do we have to force you to change. That's it. That's it. I'm not trying to have no long discussion about slavery. I don't want to hear about how your grandparents didn't own no slaves. I'm so tired of white folks telling black people they family didn't own no slaves. I don't care if your family didn't own any slaves. I can promise you one thing, your family benefited from the people who did own slaves. I bet you one thing, your family got a job because slavery existed. I bet you that. I bet you your family benefited from the enslavement of mine because the enslavement of African people was the central catalyst. It was the engine. It was the main commodity. The enslavement of African people is the heart and soul of America's rise to greatness. So whether they own slaves or not, they benefit from it. It's no different than a white person today saying, I never shot no black person. I never called no black person the N-word, which is a lie. Every white person has used the N-word before. Every white person has used the N-word. I'm going to say it again. Every white let me say this. When I was vice principal at a charter school here in Philadelphia, this is almost 20 years ago. When I was vice principal at a charter school here in Philadelphia, the number one reason I had to suspend the white kids, the number one reason for suspensions of kindergartner and first grade white kids was use of the N-word against their African classmates. I'm going to say it again. I'm not quoting from no book. I don't need to read no study. I'm telling you what I lived. The number one reason I had to suspend kindergarten and first grade white kids was for calling black kids the N-word. So let me ask you a question. You're telling me 5- and 6-year-old white kids who actually live around black kids are going to school and calling them the N-word? 5- and 6-year-old white kids who actually live around black kids are going to school calling them the N-word. And you want me to believe that a 20-year-old white kid ain't never used the word. A 30-year-old white person ain't never used the word. A 40- and 50-year-old white person ain't never used the word. A 50 and 60 and 70 and 80-year-old so-called liberal progressive white has never called a black person the N-word, but yet and still, I had 5- and 6-year-olds calling their black kindergarten and first grade classmates the N-word, and you want me to believe you never used it. If there's any black person stupid enough to believe the white people you know have never called a black person the N-word, then you are out of your mind. You deserve to be played like the fool you are. You black men out there with your snow bunnies, if you really believe your white wife has never called another black man the N-word and still does when you're not around, in fact, not only do they do it, they call you the N-word when you're not around. Oh, yeah. Do you really think Kim Kardashian never let one fly in talking about Kanye after they separated? Do you really think Kim Kardashian ain't never let one fly in talking about Kanye West after they separate? Do you really think Robert De Niro didn't let the N-word fly when he was talking about his black wife, when she tried to take half his money, although the courts wouldn't let him? You don't think they let one fly? Oh, really? You really think the white women married to black men are different than the white women married to white men? You believe it. You believe the white women married to black men are different from the white women married to white men. I want to talk to white America right now. I want to talk to white people who claim to be liberal progressives. To all the white people who participated in the George Floyd protests, I have a question to all the white people who participated in the George Floyd protests. 2 years ago, white people all over America integrated the Black Marches for Justice. Can I ask you white people, where were you when our brothers and sisters in Akron, Ohio were protesting the other day for Brother Wade? I'm talking to the white activists. Millions of you protested 2 years ago all over the country. It was all over the news. I want to ask you good white people, where were you the other day when our brothers and sisters were protesting in Akron? Where were you when Ma'Khia Bryant got shot multiple times for having a knife? Where were you when, what is our brother's name? Amir Pope in Minneapolis, Minnesota, shot to death in his cousin's apartment? Where were you? Where did all the good white people go from the George Floyd protests? I mean, it's only been 2 years. Where are all these white people who were on the streets? Millions of you, every city. You know where you went? You went to hell home because you were not serious. You were not concerned. And the reason you infiltrated to march was to make sure your privilege would not be jeopardized. They did not get into the George Floyd protests for you. They got into the George Floyd protests for them. The white folks who marched to make sure you didn't get nothing. They deliberately diluted the black power of the march to make sure it amounted to nothing. Let me say it again so you can understand, overstand, and understand me. Let me say it again because I want you to understand, overstand, and understand me. The white protesters of the George Floyd protests, the most comprehensive social protests in American history since the Dr. King assassination protests, resulted in nothing for black people because the white people who infiltrated the march did so to dilute the direction, dilute the agenda, dilute the black power. And as a result of that, Negroes received nothing. Do you think those white people who marched in the George Floyd protests, do you think they care about what happened to Brother Waylon in Akron? Do you think they care about Ma'Khia Bryant? Do you think they care about Amir Pope and all the other countless numbers of black folks who've died before or since? But you Negroes are so in love with being accepted by a people who will never accept you, it's absolutely ridiculous. You Negroes are so in love with being accepted by a people who will never accept you. Ain't no such thing as an anti-racist white person. That is the biggest piece of bullish I have heard all year. For a white person to be anti-racist, when you understand what racism means, it means that they would be anti their own people, and they're never going to be that. You damn black liberals with your sexual integrationist agenda keep trying to make white folks feel comfortable. And you do this at the expense of black dignity. You do this at the expense of black self-respect. You do this at the expense of black pride. If you cannot go into a room of white folks without catering to them at the expense of my truth. See, when I go into a room of white folks, I know I'm representing every African on the face of this earth. If you say something disrespectful about my Congolese brothers and sisters, I'ma check you. You say something disrespectful about one of my Caribbean Africans, I'ma check you. You say something disrespectful about my Africans in Europe, my Africans in Asia, I'ma check you. Say something disrespectful about my Brazilian Africans, my Surinamese Africans, my Guyana, I'ma check you. Say something disrespectful about my Nigerian Africans, my South American Africans. Say something disrespectful about my Kenyan Africans, I'ma check you. I'm not letting nobody whose privilege is based off my people's oppression make me feel so uncomfortable that I'm going to start kissing up to them and make them feel comfortable. How often you see white folks kissing up to make black people feel comfortable? How often do you see white folks kissing up to make black people feel comfortable? No. Ain't no anti-racist white person. Listen to this. Playing the race card is an idiomatic phrase that refers to the exploitation by someone of either racist or anti-racist attitude in the audience in order to gain an advantage. It constitutes an accusation of bad faith directed at the person or persons raising concerns as it regards racism. Okay. The exploitation by somebody in the audience to gain an advantage. So let me ask a question, white people. What advantage do black people get when we remind you that you are a racist? When I tell you that all white people are racist, does that stop police brutality? Does that deliver reparations? Does that reverse miseducation? Does that build independent hospitals in the black community? Does that stop mass incarceration? I'm trying to look at the unfair advantage that black people get. What is the unfair advantage that black people get when we remind white folks that you do not believe in freedom, you don't believe in justice, and you don't believe in equality? And the only time you use those words is when you're celebrating your fictitious history, or you're trying to colonize somebody's land and resources in the name of making the world safe for democracy. If you love democracy so much, if you love democracy, that means the CIA has never assassinated a democratically elected president. Is that true? President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, is it true that the CIA, which is a branch of the U.S. government, is it true that the CIA has never assassinated a democratically elected president? Because last time I checked, Patrice Emery Lumumba, the first democratically elected prime minister of the Congo, was democratically elected. And his execution was ordered by Eisenhower on the eve of Kennedy's election, and Kennedy co-signed it too. And y'all had that brother assassinated, had his body buried, dug up, chopped up, sliced up, dissolved in acid, reburied, and y'all just now giving his teeth back to his family this year. And that happened in 61. Y'all just now giving his teeth back to his family in 2022, and that happened in 61. And he was democratically elected, and he's not the only one. I can give you a whole list of African and Caribbean African and South American African and Central American African leaders who were democratically elected that the CIA assassinated. So don't tell me y'all give a damn about no democracy. Don't ever tell me y'all give a damn about no democracy. Any sisters in the Philadelphia area can make me a pot of homemade chicken noodle soup. I need me a pot of homemade, let me call on the queen mothers. Let me call queen mothers in the Philadelphia area. I need a queen mother to make me a pot of chicken noodle soup, old school style. I want the 1960s chicken noodle soup. I am an orator. I need my lungs clear. I'm taking my garlic. I'm taking my vitamin C. I got my apple cider vinegar. I got my black seed. I got my cayenne. I got my green tea. I got my orange juice, my alkaline water, my copper bottle. Queen mothers, I need a pot of Philadelphia homemade black woman's chicken noodle soup. I need that. I need that. Text my phone. I'm picking up some chicken noodle soup tomorrow from some queen mother. I can't do the queens because y'all going to pull the Kim Ringworm on me. Y'all going to pull Anaya the Cyber Thought on me. I'm not doing it. I'll come to your house and pick up the chicken noodle soup. You're going to turn it into a whole scandal. Too much cyber thoughting. I can't do the young queens. Queen mother only. 215-989-9858.